Hi there, you're listening to the first edition of In the Den. Delighted that we've got Paul Wood, our head coach here at Swinton Lions, and we've been talking about Swinton in the first part of the show. But now I want to talk a little bit about your rugby league career, Paul, because you played a lot of games, you won a lot of things. How did you get into rugby league? How did it all start?
Well, I was, I was what you probably say I was a late starter, really. I only started playing when I was at high school because most of my mates played football. I did have some friends who played rugby, but it just really didn't interest me at first. I used to go watching Wigan as a young kid before I started playing. My grandparents were quite big rugby fans, Wigan fans. I always remember having the Wigan jersey with JJB on the front
I have
and
one of them.
stuff. Yeah, everyone's after them now.
Yeah,
It's
they are. They're
one
worth
of
a bit of money now, which I
yeah,
kept
yeah,
them.
the retro
Yeah.
look and that. But yeah, so I went to high school. I went to the Deanery High School. My games teacher, Mr. Butchall, massive influence on my life really and my rugby career. He got me playing rugby because my school was literally for the first 12 weeks of your PE class, you had to play rugby, whether you wanted to or not.
Right.
You had no choice.
Yeah.
It was literally like that's the top group,
Yeah.
and then we had another group which were called the odds and sods.
Right.
They was like the lads who played cricket and football.
Yeah.
Didn't have any interest, but you still played rugby.
Yeah.
And I just got thrown into the top group. He looked at me and said, "You look quite athletic. Come over here."
Yeah.
Didn't know my name at this point. Just kept calling me Blondie. I remember that.
Right.
Started playing rugby, and I was involved in everything. And I was always quite game as a kid, I suppose. And I was just involved in all the tacklings. And he kept saying, "Is that Blondie again? Is that Blondie?" And he kept praising me all the time. And then he went, "Right, come for rugby trials on Wednesday." And at the time, I was going for football trials. And I said, "No," I said, "I'm going to go for football trials." Yeah. And he just basically said, "You're not. You're coming to rugby."
Right.
And that was it. I started playing. I played my first competitive game for the school. I think we played against Cowley. I think it was.
St. Helens.
In St. Helens, yeah. I'm sure that
Ray
was
French,
my first
I think,
game.
was the coach there at the time.
Yeah, Ray French. He was involved with Cowley, years ago, PE teacher down there. But anyway, we played that game. Really, really enjoyed it. And then one of my friends at school, his mum and dad went, "You should come and play amateur rugby on a Sunday as well." Right. So then I ended up then going playing amateur rugby. Within 3 months, I was playing for Wigan Town team.
Yeah.
And I was playing 3 rugby matches. I'd gone from nothing to playing 3 rugby games a week, school, amateur, and town team rugby. And just loved it.
Yeah.
Just like
this. What position in them days were you playing?
I was playing loose forward as a young kid.
Right.
So I was playing I was playing second row or loose forward.
Right.
Which I played loose forward and back row really a lot as a young amateur. But when I played for St. Williams. I did 1 year at Wigan St. Jude's, and then I did under 12s, and then I played for St. Williams because all my mates were there, and it was literally just a stone throw away from my house. So what I did was I went playing for St. Williams. But in St. Williams, it was one of those clubs where when you got to under 13s, it was the last age group, and then you all filtered off into different teams. So a lot went to Wigan St. Pat's, some went to St. Jude, some went to Ince Rose Bridge. We was such a successful team from a young age. We was winning everything.
Yeah.
That the parents went, "We're not disbanding this team. We've got to keep all these lads together." So we was the first age group then to take St. William all the way up to under 18.
Right.
But because we was the first team to do that, when we got to under 18s, there was no. It's a combination of 2 year groups. So there was no older kids.
Right.
So we really struggled, and we'd had some young lads sign for Wigan, Warrington, St. Helens. So we'd lost a few of our better players. No players. I was back row loose forward.
Right.
All of a sudden, you're going to have to play prop.
Right.
Played prop. Got signed. Playing prop.
You signed as a prop.
Yeah. Played prop at amateur because we didn't have any prop forwards.
Right.
Signed at Warrington. And that was it then. I was made into a prop forward. I was never big enough really to play prop forward at that time. I was really skinny and I was like I'm 6'1", but I wasn't big enough. Eventually I went back into the back row. So in my early career in Super League, I did play some seasons in the back row.
Right.
I played majority of my career at prop forward. So that's how I started playing rugby.
Now you're still a big lad. There's no getting away from the fact that I see the nicest, scary man I know. But you're still a big lad. But you were massive as a prop when you were playing at Warrington. So how much weight did you have on you to play at that Super League level? Because you're big now.
Yeah.
There's no fat on you. You're just big. But how much bigger you were as a prop at Super League?
To be honest, I wasn't much big. I was probably about similar to what I am now.
Really?
Really, yeah.
Yeah,
But
because you look bigger in pictures. You look bulkier.
yeah. I think when I have my hair shaved, I think that makes me look
even
a bit
more scary.
bigger, yeah. And you have the tight tops on as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was very similar weight really.
Right. So what weight are you?
I'm about 108 kilo at the minute.
Right.
And I, back end of my career, I was playing at about 105 kilo, to be honest.
So there's not much difference.
No, but I'm probably carrying that extra weight now, and it's more of a midriff. It's a lot leaner around the middle. But so yeah, I mean, yeah, when I was always told I needed to get bigger. And I spent a lot of my career really just putting size on because, like I say, I played prop forward, but I was never really built to play prop forward, and I was wasted really. I was a ball player.
If you look back then to your rugby league career, your professional career, and you could pick one game to play in that game again, what would it be?
Oh, I'm not sure really. I mean, I loved playing in the Challenge Cup finals. They was magnificent days. Really enjoyed them. But you know what? If I could go back to one game, I'd go back to 2013. We played Wigan in a grand final. We was winning, I think, 6-2.
Right, yeah.
Went into half time, leading that game. Ended up losing it. Picked up some injuries. But I'd love to replay that game because I think it's a game that we really let slip for Warrington. That was like our best moment. Everyone says it's the best Warrington team. It's the best Super League team that never won a grand final.
Right, yeah.
People say that to me constantly. Yeah. And it annoys me because, you know, the fact that I got to 2 grand finals with Warrington and we never won one. Right. But I think that Wigan one, if I had my time again, I'd love to go back and just sort of have a little bit more of an influence on that game. And, you know, I think we probably let the fact that we lost Steph Ratchford, Joel Monaghan, went into the second half with 15 players. I think we let that get to us.
Your mind.
And I think really if we'd have just kept a bit more composure in that second half, I believe we could have won that game. Understood. So really, honestly, I think about it every day. That game, still sits with me.
Because I know you love winning, don't you?
Yeah, I love winning. Yeah, and I'd have loved to have been able to sit here and say, you know, I've got a grand final winners medal, but unfortunately, I've got 2 losers medals. And look, I'm fortunate that I got an opportunity to play in those games because some players don't. You know, I speak to players now; they've never played in a final. You know, never had some of the experiences that I managed to have at Warrington. So I am fortunate that I got to play in those games. But you know, I'd love to have won. Especially that one at Wigan. I think that was one we let get away. But you know, Wigan, you look at what they achieve ever since they've been formed, Wigan, they've always just been that team. They never say die. They're just relentless, and they'll always come
winners,
back.
Aren't they? Serial winners.
They just know how to win big games.
But it's that Wigan way, isn't it? Funny enough, we talk about it, and we've talked about it. I've talked about it to other people. It never changes. They just know how to win.
Yeah, they do. There's an expectation from them, and spoke to a few former Wigan players about this. You know, what's the difference between, you know, sort of other clubs and when you're at Wigan, and said that you're expected to win. You know, there's a lot of pressure on to win. There is at Warrington. It's just that never won the big one, I suppose. And like I said, we came very close at the time, and it's a shame really because those teams that I played in the 2 grand finals in 12 and 13, you know, if we could have probably kept that team together for another couple of years. After that 2013, we lost quite a few players. Adrian Morley went, Gaz Carvel. If we could have kept Brett Hodgson, big losses really. And if we could have kept some of those players together, we probably could have gone on to do it. So
understood. You talk about Tony Smith a lot. So you've mentioned him today. You've mentioned him in some of our private conversations when you've been supporting me with stuff recently. And you mentioned him when we have our chats at hospitality at the games. What is it about Tony Smith that had such a positive impact on you?
I think with Tony, I think it's more how we viewed things was different. He had quite. I think before Tony came in, I was used to like high octane energy. Everything was fueled by really high energy, and aggression as well. You know, aggression. And I think when Tony came in, he had this calmness about him,
Yeah.
and I just really like that calmness. And I
Yeah.
thought this is different
Yeah.
because he came in with a reputation of being a bit of a taskmaster. Tony. Some people said, "Oh, he's like a school teacher
Yeah.
and stuff." And what they meant is that he's disciplined and he challenges you.
Yeah.
That's what they meant. And some
Yeah.
people don't like that.
No.
And he came in, and I just liked the calmness that he had.
Right.
And he came in, and just with his approach, his delivery, the simplicity that he made things, lots of clarity
Yeah.
in terms of when you have a game plan, everyone knew exactly what he was doing. And it was just refreshing, and I like that side to it. And I always remember Tony coming up to me once before a game, and he said, "Woody," he said, I use pace around the changing room, like
Right.
really angry, frustrated,
Yeah.
on edge." And Tony came up to me in one of his earlier coaching sessions, and he went, "Woody, I'll not do the Aussie accent." He
Yeah.
said, "Woody, you're making me nervous."
Yeah.
And I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Just try and relax."
Yeah.
He said, "Because you'll play better. Trust me, you'll
Yeah.
play better." He said, "But I think you make other people nervous as well." He said, "You're
Right.
pacing up and down like a caged animal."
Yeah.
I was like, "I've never tried any other way,
Yeah.
really."
Yeah.
And look, you know, I'd sort of, at this point, you know, I'd played for Warrington. I'd been involved in a few Great Britain squads
Yeah.
at this point. You know, I'd played for England
Yeah.
and toured with Great Britain and stuff. So I'd had a relatively good career at
Yeah.
this point. But I do think Tony brought an extra bit out of me. I
Yeah.
feel like I played my best rugby under Tony, even though I never got picked for Great Britain
Yeah.
under Tony. I do feel like I played my best rugby
Understood.
under him. And I think he just tipped that balance of the aggression and the smartness
Yeah.
of how you play rugby. And I
Understood.
think he brought that to a lot of players. I
Yeah.
think he challenged us to think about the game a little bit differently,
Yeah.
and how we attack
Yeah.
in rugby, and even our philosophies on defence. He challenged our mindset as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just like, you know, again, you just, I think at certain parts of your career and certain times in your career, you just connect with coaches.
Yeah.
You know, would I have had that relationship with Tony early in my career? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You know,
Because you've matured by that point.
exactly. I
Yeah.
was more mature. I wanted to learn about the game a little
Yeah.
bit different. I probably wanted to learn about a different style
Yeah.
of play. You know, Tony told me to develop my passing game and my
Yeah.
offload game, which I did. You know, I was consistently, when Tony took over, I was consistently one of the top offloaders
Yeah.
for Warrington. And he loved the aspect that I could, you know, develop my game and evolve it, really. Because he said I was quite one dimensional. He said,
Yeah.
you really, he said, you run hard, you tackle hard. He said, but, you know, you get a quick play of the ball. He said, but I'll be honest, I want more from my forwards. I
Yeah.
went, tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do
Yeah.
it. I've always had that sort of mindset where whatever my coach wants me to
Yeah.
do and what philosophy they have, I'll always buy into it. And
Understood.
I loved it at Warrington as well. You know, I did
Yeah.
enjoy it, so I didn't want to move on. And I could see Tony was probably going to start taking us to finals as
Right.
well.
That's
So,
good.
but yeah, I just really liked what he was about, Tony. I thought he was quite a very calm, influential, like spiritual type of guy, really.
Yeah. You talked before about sometimes players fit and some players time they don't, and you talked about how you fit with Tony really well. Is there a time in your career where you felt there was a disconnect between you and a coach, or you and a club, or you even and a teammate?
Well, on the flip side of that, you know, I sort of felt disconnected towards my time at Warrington, and Tony was the coach then, and
Yeah.
I'd spent 17 years at Warrington at this point, and just I had a year left on my contract, and sort of just went in one day and said, "Look, I don't feel that this is the right fit for me anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I don't." I was just being completely honest. I said, "I need something different."
Yeah.
Looking back, I don't know whether it was the right thing to do, to be honest. I probably should have just seen my contract out and probably worked on a few things personally more than moving club. But I just felt like I needed a change. And
Yeah. And how did he react to that? Because you'd had a good relationship, clearly.
Tony he agreed. He said, "Yeah, you're probably right. You know, we've had this conversation a few times, and you know, if you want to move on, we'll not stand in your way." And again, it's probably a bit of a regret, really, for me, because I probably should have worked on some stuff personally
Yeah.
for me, in me, more than thinking, oh, if I change clubs, then that's going to fix things.
Yeah.
I thought that was the answer at the time. You
Yeah.
only know what you know, but when you look back,
Yeah.
it was probably something I probably shouldn't have done. I probably should have stuck it out.
But what did you learn from that?
Again, I learned that not to always look at the change of external things, really, in terms of, changing things outside of you, thinking that it's going to, fix the situation. It might have a short term solution, but I think you always come back to yourself, don't you, where you are personally. So I think that's one thing I learned from that experience. So, but yeah, but on saying that, I learned a lot. I say it's something I probably shouldn't have done, but I learned a lot from that experience, and that took me on a different journey. Then that did take me on to like more of a self discovery journey about myself. Who am I now? I'm a semi-professional rugby player now. I've got a business, and who am I away from rugby?
Yeah.
So you go on to this like bit of a journey, which most rugby players do,
Yes.
if not all rugby players really, when you come away from the sport. So it's you look back and you think, did I make that decision there? But you always learn something from your decisions.
Excellent. You're listening to In the Den with me, Jason Harborough, and our head coach, Paul Wood.